Hi, this is Elliot, and today I'm going to be talking about some really interesting New York Times reporting from this week and it's titled, "The Justice Department, DOJ, is intensifying efforts to determine if Trump hid documents." And there are two big points that they make in there that we'll unpack a little bit in today's video. Number one, that the federal authorities have secured the confidential cooperation of a staffer, someone who works at Mar-a-Lago. And number two, that federal authorities are putting out a wave of subpoenas and grand jury testimony. So what does that all mean? What's significant about getting a current staffer to work there? And what's happening with this grand jury testimony? And I think first it's important to pull back and think about, well, what exactly are they looking into when they talk about what happened at Mar-a-Lago? And there are a number of outstanding questions that any prosecutor looking into the mishandling of documents would want to look into in terms of what happened, not just if documents were retained, but what efforts there might have been to conceal the fact that they were under investigation. So number one, how does the surveillance system work at Mar-a-Lago? Number two, who has access to the place where documents were stored? Number three, were documents moved and when? Who saw them moved? Why? Number four, next question, why are some documents not missing or available? All of these are valuable questions that a current staffer at Mar-a-Lago could be in a position to answer and really shed some insight and light on. And looking at some other witnesses that the special counsel has already talked to, you can kind of see where they're going. They've already spoken to one individual, number one. His name is Matthew Calamari. He is the director of security for the Trump organization, and they've already spoken with him. And I would think probably about some of these questions, number one. Number two, there was some back and forth with Donald Trump's valet. His name is Walt Nauta. And they questioned him. It has been reported that they were dangling the possibility of charging him with a crime to get his cooperation. And apparently that backfired, at least according to the New York Times. And so he hasn't been heard from in a while. Needless to say, an employee like a director of security, a valet, or whomever this mystery confidential employee might be, could all provide some measure of insight into how things worked at Mar-a-Lago. And that's not uncommon in criminal investigations. You go to, frankly, sometimes you get the most useful information out of the lowest folks on the chain of command, the people who are working there and merely overseeing things. So that's sort of what they might be poking into, just a series of questions around what might have happened with documents, not just once they were there, but to conceal or hide them. Which gets us to the next question. What is the law governing this, and what exactly is the special counsel looking into? Well, again, setting aside the question of just the mere possession of the documents, which can be a crime in some circumstances, it looks like the special counsel is looking into obstruction of justice. So what does that mean? And it's kind of a serious offense. You hear the term bandied around a lot. So to establish or prove obstruction of justice, what prosecutors would have to bring is evidence that, number one, someone knowingly, number two, concealed or hid or tampered or deleted or altered some tangible object or file or record, and here's the big language, with the intent to impede an investigation of the United States. Now, there's a couple things going on there. A person would have to not just destroy a document or a file, but they'd have to know that there was an open investigation that was seeking that information. And the destroying the file or concealing it was done for the sole purpose, or the express purpose, maybe not the sole purpose, of getting in the way of the investigation. So it's two hoops you have to jump through. You first have to prove that there was an obstructive act, but that the person intended to get in the way of an investigation. And always, I know Harry's talked about this before, always that last intent piece, what did they know, is the tricky thing. And they ask folks like these employees, well, did you hear anyone saying that they knew there was an investigation, and did they then still try to move boxes or hide them or conceal them? Did they say anything about why they were doing it? Did they receive the subpoena? Once they had that subpoena in hand, they knew there was an investigation. So any acts to hide things, allegedly, would have been possible evidence of obstruction of justice. So we'll see what they have there. And then finally, the last question, how noteworthy is this? What's the big deal? And I would say, number one, as I sort of teased before, confidential informants are incredibly common when investigating any sort of group or people, criminal enterprises or whatever it might be. There are a couple reasons why someone may wish to stay confidential. The big one is safety. Now, there's no evidence that someone's been threatened here or anything like that, but there are reasons that witnesses may want to protect their safety or their identity. Number two, prosecutors may feel that they'll get more candid and more honest testimony out of somebody if that person knows that their identity will not be revealed. Moreover, that person is a lot less likely to be influenced in their testimony by anyone else if, in fact, they can stay secret. And most importantly, how remarkable or noteworthy is the subpoenas or the grand jury? Oh, not at all. Both are common investigative tools, subpoenas for documents, subpoenas for testimonies, and bringing it all before the grand jury is something you find in criminal investigations at the highest levels into possibly presidents of the United States, or the lowest levels, just criminal investigations of ordinary conduct around the country. So that's what we've been talking about today. We will have more in the coming days. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.